Today we're going to dive into the real engine of history. And believe me, it's not what you think. It's not about the clash of swords or the rise of empires. It's about how ideas get translated, transformed, and how they end up shaping the destiny of entire civilizations, from ancient times right up to the age of AI.
So let's start with the big one, the ultimate question, right? What is it that really makes a civilization succeed or just crumble into dust? Your mind probably jumps to all those epic stories you've seen in movies or read in history books.
We think about these mighty armies, sprawling empires, legendary conquerors. But what if all that, the battles and the territory, isn't the whole story? What if the most enduring power isn't forged on the battlefield at all?
What if the real story, the secret sauce, is all about how a civilization thinks? Because the true instruments of power aren't swords, they're translation and education. You see, where conquest ends, that's where cognition begins.
Okay, so that brings us to our first big idea here. The long-term stability and, the real strength of a civilization isn't measured in how much land it controls, but in something much, much deeper.
It's measured in what you could call its collective cognitive wealth. I want you to think of it like a society's shared mind, or its collective consciousness. When this wealth is high, that society is going to be innovative, moral, and super resilient. But when this starts to decline, a civilization's mind fractures long before its walls ever do.
So you might be wondering, how did the great civilizations actually build up all of this cognitive wealth? Well, it turns out they used a surprisingly consistent and really powerful process. Just look at this incredible pattern that repeats all through history. It starts way back with ancient Persia, which literally built its foundations by importing and adapting ideas from India and Greece. Then, fast forward a few centuries, and the Islamic Golden Age comes along and perfects this whole process. They created amazing institutions like the House of Wisdom to synthesize knowledge from all over the known world. And here's the kicker. Europe's own Renaissance was sparked by re-importing that exact same knowledge, which had been saved and expanded in the Arab world. It's this amazing cycle of knowledge being passed on and transformed.
So here's the playbook, right? It's this four-step cycle. First comes conquest. That sets the borders. But then the real work begins. Step 2 is translation, bringing in all that outside knowledge. Step 3 is synthesis, where you weave that new knowledge into your own culture. And finally, step 4 is innovation, where you create something completely new. That is how cognitive wealth really grows.
But okay, how did they get this wealth out to everybody? I mean, not just the scholars and the elites. Well, the answer is one of humanity's oldest and maybe greatest technologies: storytelling. Collections like 1001 Nights were so much more than just entertainment. They were like cultural algorithms. These stories had all these complex ideas, everything from wisdom and governance to deception and justice, baked right into narratives that anyone could understand. They were basically mental blueprints for how to reason and how to feel empathy. There's actually a concept for this, and it's called threat simulation theory. So, just like our brains use dreams at night to rehearse responses to things that might be dangerous, these story collections let entire societies simulate threats. Stuff like political betrayal or social chaos, and practice how to respond, but in a totally safe, symbolic space. They were, in a way, like collective waking dreams for a whole culture.
And this is the real kicker right here. The moral of the story wasn't just a nice little thought to end on. It was a survival algorithm. It was a time-tested strategy for dealing with really complex social dangers. And it was encoded not in dry logic, but in powerful emotion.
Now, this whole process of building up cognitive wealth, well, it didn't happen the same way everywhere. In fact, if you look at history, you can see two huge, totally different paths in how civilizations organize their thinking.
So on one side, you've got the Greek Western tradition. It's very analytical, it's deductive, and it's all about explaining and mastering the external world. Its ultimate outcome? Technology. But on the other side, you have the Eastern tradition, which is more synthetic and analogical. It's focused on achieving internal harmony and balance within yourself, and its outcome is wisdom and empathy.
To put it really simply, for thousands of years, these two incredibly powerful but kind of incomplete hemispheres of human cognition grew up separately. One got really good at understanding the measurable, while the other focused all its energy on perfecting the meaningful.
So what happens when these two historically separate ways of thinking finally, crash into each other? Well, that's the story of our time, and the thing driving this collision is a powerful new force: artificial intelligence. You could say that artificial intelligence is the great reunion. I mean, it calculates with the cold, hard precision of that analytic tradition, but it can also learn and recognize patterns in a way that feels a lot like the intuition of the synthetic tradition. It's this amazing technological bridge connecting the world of rational structure with the world of poetic resonance.
So the central tension of our age isn't really East versus West anymore. No. Now it's data-driven cognition versus meaning-driven cognition. The great challenge for our civilization is to figure out how to balance the incredible power of optimization with the absolute necessity of purpose.
And this leaves us facing three pretty distinct futures. The first is what you might call a mechanized intellect, a world run by pure calculation, where efficiency just steamrolls empathy. The second is an augmented humanity, where we use AI as a tool to amplify our own creativity, our ethics, our self-awareness. But the ideal path, the best one, is the third, an integrative cognitive ecology, a future where human and artificial intelligence exist together in a balanced state of co-thinking.
This timeline really shows the grand sweep of history when you look at it through the lens of cognition. I mean, we've moved from the logic of the classical age, through theology and science, to the algorithms of today's digital age. But now, we're entering the AI age, and it's defined by this integrative, reflexive way of thinking. What that means is, we're no longer just conquering knowledge, we're actually starting to co-evolve with it.
And that brings us right back to the final, critical question. The future isn't going to belong to the civilization that has the most data. It's going to belong to the one that most wisely transforms that data into meaning. So the choice is really ours. Are we going to become a civilization of pure calculation or one of conscious coevolution?